or like
Peace brother, but it better be brothers and sisters.
humans. Yeah, that's great.
Oh, good. Did you read it? That's good. Does anybody else want
Pretty
this?
darn good.
I just got a new book. Thank you.
I did read it.
You read it
Yes,
already?
actually I have a copy of it.
So now we have to put council books.
Did you read it?
I did circulate one to staff for the
Women talking?
yeah.
This morning. I had a good one talk about my sister.
I don't like strategy.
It was,
I watched the Spider-Man movie.
I have gone 35 years watching a wedding party.
Because I thought I knew more.
Yes.
Canadians,
It was really super intense and really like emotional. All those emotions flying around.
That's great.
It was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And, but I think it went really well. They were really
Spider-Man was excellent.
Well, that's good.
great. And then the only wedding that happened, like she was the baby in the family. She was the first one. It was like baby and they kept saying that Sandra, you're first sister. There's three of them and her sister.
I thought it was me. I couldn't get council agenda.
Thank you. There was a picture of us and her sister with her wedding ring and an engagement ring. And she's like, Melissa, and she's like, really? I didn't say anything until today. And I was like, was anyone else there? Yeah. She's like, we also bought a house last week. She's like, we were just telling you
It's really, really wise.
Just bring it down there. This could probably be
Yeah, you
I can open the water. I did right now. I sent it.
I mean, I could open the video, but I great night.
I know that there's a plug over there, and there's one. Let's plug it into the.
But all the photos are right in there.
Is it just me or is it yours?
Yeah.
Of course, I didn't like download my packaging last year.
I cleaned up nice.
You did clean up.
My whole family.
Nice.
Not my wedding. My
I'm talking to Josh right now about her wedding.
Straight out of the 70s.
The council one, or is the new one here? Council 2, is that?
They were like
Or guest, maybe I'll try the guest network. You know, like
they all danced with each other. It was crazy. They were so much fun. I think they were so much
What's the, you were trying to, I was trying to council there.
now I'm trying to think of gas.
This rate? Oh, my phone.
Hey Duncan, did you see that truck ahead of you this morning? I was going to slow right down to 30 kilometers. I saw you in my rear view mirror. I was going to slow down right to 30 kilometers. Just coming in, just when you drove in this morning.
Oh, okay. No, I wasn't thinking. I thought you meant when I was taking my car to the tire place this morning.
Oh.
And then you thought.
The cracks of his
Possibly, yes. Yeah, I feel like it's been a while. Oh, okay. I'll not guess. I'm just gonna hotspot. Yeah. This is
I got that far. I told the full PDF for the.
Oh well, good lesson. Just make sure I download the before. Yeah, of course. Thank you.
You know, 30 years later, I realized I liked this quote. I thought it was a book, but I like there's so I read it. Changed my life.
Never even thought about it. How are you?
All right, we were waiting for some. My own. It seems to be. Oh yeah. The right path. Everyone's here, we can start.
Where were you at?
Yeah, really good job. Came on really fast. I guess I got on for a week. Never go back there. I've been working every day. Yeah. For the last.
That's great. Are you actually
it's not everyone's no, it's my somebody take a look. Yeah, it's good to be close to
for you?
That's awesome. Unfortunately, I can't travel with Delegation because I am staying in Northern important. Oh yeah, late. That's right. I'm just thinking.
I don't know. The only thing sometimes it's good.
Although I have to say,
Well, it's kind of deceptive because it's lower, but it's not. Only visible. Exactly. Which is 1/3. 1/3 is together, but not that big. So it's actually pretty small. Yeah. So overall, trying to sound good. All right, here.
I feel like that needs to be said.
You don't have your opportunity. I'm sure she's comfortable for 15 years. No, I think it's not negative at all, just to say, let's be cautious and understand what it means. Pay attention to the underlying trend. 10 o'clock. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here, everyone. I will call our District of Tofino regular council meeting to order for 10 a.m. on Tuesday, October 8th, and recognize that we're conducting our business today in Tofino territory. We'll ask first, please, for a motion to adopt the agenda. Thank you, Councillor Steer, Councillor Chalmers. Just one thing I'll note about the agenda is one of our delegation presenters, Heather Shobe, may be a little late because of the highway construction, so if she is not here by the time we get to her, we'll stop and postpone it, and then we'll pick it up at that point. Okay, all in favor of adopting the agenda? Thank you. Motion carried. We have some minutes from the regular council meeting held September 10th for adoption. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any errors or revisions that were noted? None? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. And minutes from the public hearing that was also held on September 10th.
Move adoption.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions noted in those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. And then minutes of the second public hearing that was held on September 10th.
Adoption.
Thank you. Moved, second, third, and fourth. Any errors or omissions noted in those public hearing minutes? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Thank you very much. Motion carried. Okay, so that brings us to the public comment on agenda items, and we do have 4 individuals that have signed up. And so just a word to everyone, you have 2 minutes, and there is the timer that we get going, and we welcome your comments. So first up is Leah Austin, speaking to item 7.5, which is her correspondence regarding the noise complaints and bus idling and the matter discussed last time. Go to do it.
So good morning, everybody. Thank you for reading my letter. It's pretty clear how I feel about it. But I will say that I realize that having that service is very important to the community, and that I am living in an industrial area. So I do expect that there would be some noise during the hours of, business hours, 7 to 4 or 5 or so. But I do have an issue with idling outside of those hours for, especially the high idling that they sometimes do. And I also feel that the fumes that are being from idling up to half an hour, 45 minutes sometimes can fill our neighborhood with more fumes that are not healthy for anybody. So I also feel that if the District of Tofino takes the side of non-enforcement, that will mean that the bus company will feel that they can just do what they want at any time of the day or night. I also feel that if we take this stand as well, that we won't have as much communication with the bus company as we used to, because it used to be locally owned, now it's owned by someone from out of town. And I also feel that if the district takes this stand, that it'll show that the district kind of puts the commercial business up in front of the health and welfare of the community. So that's about all I have to say besides what I've written in my letter. It is a pretty hard situation, as I've watched the video, and everybody had a hard time really taking that stand at the last meeting. So I do realize it's a sensitive issue, but I do feel that residents need to be taken over the welfare, or the welfare of residents need to be taken over commercial activity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next speaker to the same item is Adam Smallwood.
Hi.
Hi, Adam.
Okay, I'm just going to read off my letter. So as I mentioned in my previous letter, I experience high idling diesel motors for sometimes 40 minutes long. It sends a low vibration through my home. Open windows during sleeping time, it's not an option. The fumes from the buses will sometimes blanket my property, depending on wind conditions. These hazards affect my peace and health. This complaint has been active with Bylaw and myself for over 2 years. Here's some of my response points from the last meeting. The observation in front of my home would not give a clear indication of noise and exhaust. The corner of my home is 50 feet from the Tofino bus depot, and maybe 75 to 100 feet to the closest bus. The videos I shared give this perspective. I believe the service is great for the community. Nobody would argue that, but it does not mean that a commercial company should be allowed to take the peace and health away from residents and not comply with bylaws. was established before Tofino bus was there. The only way it works that residential can be beside industrial is if the bylaws are enforced. We established our families and homes on Uwood trusting that we had protection with enforced bylaws. Why did Tofino bus assume they could break bylaw in the first place? Tofino is growing, and so will the bus company, with routes, service, storage, and maintenance. What will this situation look like in 5 to 10 years? The school buses were relocated from 4th Street to the current location because of complaints by residents. This should indicate the problem is real, with buses too close. I don't believe this type of maintenance activity should be and was never intended to be allowed so close to residents. It's for employees using protective equipment such as ear protection and respirators in an industrial setting. Port Alberni had a similar problem with complaints from residents and moved the buses to accommodate. Vancouver banned all diesel school buses and now use propane. Solutions, moving the buses to a better location.
I'm sorry to cut you
Yeah.
off, Adam, but.
That's it, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
But we did get your letter and your videos, so thank
Okay,
you for
thanks
that.
so much.
Yeah, thanks for
Okay.
speaking. Okay, our next speaker is Jack Gillie, speaking to item 8.2, which is the borrowing bylaw.
Okay, as much as this wastewater treatment plant is a good thing for the environment, a good thing for our relationship with Clayoquot Sound, this bylaw is not a good thing for our relationship with each other. Not for the residents or businesses of Tofino. It is not a good thing for community sustainability, not a good thing for affordability, not a good thing for social equality or fairness. Tofino is currently paying property taxes at more than double the provincial mean on a per person basis. Part of the reason for this reality is, amongst other things, that we have defined ourselves as a global tourist destination, and that we are subsidizing tourism through the use of our taxes and services, from water and sewer to parking to garbage collection. The effect of this bylaw will dramatically exacerbate this situation. The last time I spoke to you in this room, it was said by staff and council that Tofino tries to balance the split 50-50 residential to commercial. 50-50 has a nice ring to it. It sounds inherently fair, but it isn't. When we as residents are outnumbered by hundreds of thousands of tourists, 600 hotel room guests, hundreds of thousands of VCR guests, and even 100,000 day visitors per year who don't even stay here but park, surf, shower, flush, and leave. It is clear that the bulk of our services are going to visitors, and a lot of our taxes are going to service them. In summer, when water is in short supply, we are often outnumbered by a factor of 5 to 1. Tourism has provided us with an economy. Agreed, we all understand this. People are not against tourism. But let's be realistic. Everyone's taxes will go up significantly. So let's take responsibility for the future. Times have changed, and we are left trying to manage a 21st century economy on a 19th century tax system that no longer works for affordability, fairness, equity, or community sustainability. I've spent a lot of energy and time in the last year studying our tax situation, and am even more convinced that as a community, for the benefit of residents and business, we need to start a new conversation about the future that we want, and that you as council must provide leadership in that conversation. There are a lot of possibilities out there that we could and should have been discussing. Wow.
Well done, thank you. Okay, and our final speaker today is Jarmo Venalainen on the same topic.
Yeah, I'm Jarmo Venalainen. I'm going to speak the same subject as Jack just spoke about, which is the sewer plant project. It's the largest project infrastructure in Tofino ever, and it represents in one fell swoop more than a 10% tax increase for every homeowner. Just to put perspective on that, we're talking about more than $10,000, depending on interest rates, $20,000 over the next 30 years. That's what you're being asked to pay. What I find is not adding up for me is the federal government is putting in 20 million, the provincial government is putting in 20 million, and the 2,000 residents of Tofino are asked to put in 20 million. So this many people, and this many people. For what purpose? To generate hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars over those 30 years of revenue for the federal and the provincial government. That's the scope of the project. The split between who's paying is just, well, absurd, for lack of a different word. Beyond that, what really irks me is that I had to read through hundreds of pages of material to find an argument that says we had an existing liquid waste management plan which was approved. I don't know if it went through electoral process, which we can amend recently in the last few months and change a number of $20 million to $60 million. And by doing this, we do not need to go through electoral approval. It's not clear to me if the previous plan did go through electoral approval. I can't find that in the documents. If it didn't, then in essence there is no electoral approval for what is the largest tax increase item for all of Tofino. It just doesn't add up. I think we need to be much more transparent and clear about how we are approving these things. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Okay, those were our 4 speakers today, and we are going to move on into our agenda. I don't have a report to give to you today, so we'll go straight to our delegations. And our first one is from John Bowman, President of North Island College. Welcome, John.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of council. Thank you very much for sharing a few minutes of your time with me this morning. I'm here to talk to you about North Island College's planning process to develop a new 5-year strategic plan, Plan 2025. So without further ado, before I get into the planning process, I just want to provide you with a little bit of background on enrollment. It's one of the questions that I get asked most often. John, how are the college's enrollments? Where are they? Are they growing? Are they stagnant? So here is a map of the island region, North Island region, showing where our headcount enrollment was located during the past 2018-19 fiscal year. And you can see, in combination, Port Alberni campus and Ucluelet Center, along with a big chunk of our distributed learning enrollment, is located in the Alberni-Clayoquot region, about 25% overall. So I'm speaking to you today for these reasons: to inform you about NIC's planning process, to invite you to participate and contribute to setting our path for the next 5 years, and importantly, to thank you and members of the communities for supporting the college and our students. We are coming to the end of our current 5-year strategic plan, Plan 2020, and we began last spring a process to develop a new 5-year plan, Plan 2025. You're probably familiar with strategic plans, so I won't bore you with all the details of why we do it and why it's important and what's going to go into it, but it's really in a nutshell about setting our priorities and focus in the midterm over the next 5 years. These are the components of our plan. We are a provincial government organization, so we receive a mandate in legislation and from the minister in terms of why we exist, and we develop a mission statement based on that. This plan process is very focused on values, what's important to us as an organization, and what we aspire to be in the future in terms of our vision. And it will set out clearly identified priorities and goals for the next 5 years. And lastly, it will include a section on assessment and reporting so we can report to the government and our communities on how well we're doing in relation to making progress. We have 9 priorities in our current plan, which is a lot of priorities. These 5 were about what we do in terms of activities and our focus with respect to program delivery. And we had 4 other priorities that are about how we support the achievement of those first 5. I won't go into them in detail, but we have made a lot of progress and are very proud of what's been achieved during Plan 2020. So our process involves, these are the components of the planning process that are completed. We developed a comprehensive environmental scan based on information from Statistics Canada, regional demography, economic information, whole host of data which identifies the key trends and issues that we are planning for. As I mentioned, we've gone through a process to identify our key values and guiding ideas. And we've reviewed our current Plan 2020 priorities, the progress we've achieved, and where we still have gaps to go. Going forward this fall, we are focused, as I said, on mission, vision, review, and refreshment. Community and student input and engagement is very important. We want to hear from you and all of the citizens of the North Island region about how the college is doing and what you'd like to see us do in the future. And so, how can you participate? Well, I would encourage you to have a look at our plan process documents online, the environmental scan. We are in the midst of doing a major community engagement survey. Hopefully you may have already seen this already on social media or by an email invitation. It's on the front page of our website. To date, we've had 1,200 people from across North Island complete the survey. It's going to be open for another week to 10 days, and we would love to hear from more people in the Tofino, Ucluelet, and Clayoquot region about what the communities would like to see the college doing here and around the region. And thirdly, we have plans for community consultation forums. In the region, we are planning for one in Port Alberni. We haven't set a date for one in this region, but certainly open to doing that if there's enough interest. And we encourage people to share their ideas and suggestions either by email, by calling, or inviting us to meet. These are the links to our documents online, and this is the timeline, September, October, as I mentioned, the strategic planning survey, community forums in November. Our goal is to do further consultation in the new year, January to March, and finalize the new strategic plan for the college for board approval at the end of April. Just a few highlights from the Alberni-Clayoquot region to close. Lots of new programming going on in community, in Port Alberni. Early childhood education is growing. We're offering healthcare assistant. Of course, first aid and marine training is very important. Really excited about the development of our new Nushalmas language courses. We're working on an Indigenous language certificate, which we expect to be offered in this region. Lots of in-community programming work going on in the Howsit, the Tloquit, and the Way of First Nations. We'll have our first international students in Port Alberni this January. We have an ambitious capital plan to consolidate the Thibault Trade Center in Port Alberni to Rogers Street campus. And lastly, we have great support from the community in terms of our student financial awards and scholarships and bursaries. So that is a very quick overview of our planning process. I'd be delighted to take any questions and really encourage you to contribute your ideas and thoughts on the future of North Island College. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Thanks, John. Any questions from members of council? I just have one question.
Yes.
I know there's been discussion in the past about North Island College partnering or being able to deliver some courses maybe through the high school here.
Yes.
And can you give us any update on that?
I can't, but it's an important strategy for us across the region to work with our high schools. We have established instructional TV centers in a number of high schools around the North Island region. So it remains a definite possibility. I'm going to be meeting with the school board actually this evening. They're meeting in Ucluelet, and I'm sure that question will come up there as well.
I bet it will.
Yeah.
Thanks. I think it would be fabulous. Anything we can do to help our students stay in school longer and increase graduation rates and provide opportunities for them to get that kind of training without having to go all the way to Port Alberni or Nanaimo, I think would be really terrific.
The dual credit program that we offer, whereby students can enroll simultaneously in the grade 11 and 12 year in a college program, is very successful, and we'd certainly like to do more of that. We need more resources and support from the provincial government, so anything that members of council can do to raise that program profile with the ministry would be certainly much appreciated.
We hear you. Thank you. Thanks very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, our next delegation is Heather Shobe from ACRD. Hi, Heather.
Hello.
You have a good drive out?
Yes.
You didn't
I
get
made
stopped
it.
too long?
Not
You
too
did. I'm
late.
impressed. Well done.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming to speak to us about the West Coast Addendum to the Agriculture Plan.
Great. Thanks for having me. In some ways I have a really easy role because I get to speak about something that people are really interested in, and generally there's a lot of support for food and for local food and access to food. And as you guys all know, here on the coast there's specific challenges in this region because of the road work and the remote isolation in these communities. So the regional district, in 2018, we published the coastal addendum to the agriculture plan, to the Alberni agricultural plan. It was a year-long process, and we involved a lot of stakeholders in the development of the plan, including Councillor Al Anderson from the district of Tofino, so thank you, Councillor Anderson. It also involved the insight and consultation with a professional agrologist to help map out some ideas for the coast. So the addendum is a long document. It contains a lot of context, it contains some case studies, and it contains an implementation plan that has over 100 ideas of what different groups, organizations, individuals can do to support more local food production in the coastal region. And along with those, and you have a copy of one of the sort of takeaways from municipal governments there, along with those, it gives three primary overarching needs. The first is creating compost on the coast. We know we can't really do a lot of good terrestrial agriculture without composting and soil improvements to the soil. The second is to develop a coastal agricultural roundtable. And the third is to support a community coordinator or community coordinators, so one or more. In general, that sort of framework for implementation is multi-level and layered. It supports individual communities and it supports the region as a whole. The regional district isn't approaching the project in kind of a predetermined way. Apart from the framework, we're really looking to support what communities here want and to help guide resources and expertise into supporting those developments. So the regional district has dedicated some funding in 2019 to convene a coastal agricultural roundtable and to provide some direct funding supports to different projects and initiatives that are happening regionally or on the coastal region. And it's also pursuing grant applications to create sort of more funds to stimulate this program in the communities. And we're also looking to work with organizations to host or co-host the roundtable and the project from within this region or on the coast. My vision for the project really involves a very, very strong Nuu-chah-nulth leadership and participation. I don't believe that agriculture on the coast is going to look like what agriculture looks like in kind of a provincial industrial framework. So it's really important that we tailor it here and create programs and activities that are very culturally relevant and appropriate. And that requires the participation and basically taking guidance from the Nuu-chah-nulth communities itself. And the regional district we've been running sort of a similar project in the Alberni Valley. We have an agricultural development committee. It's a multi-stakeholder team that sort of guides the work of contracted agricultural support workers. So I'm one of those agricultural support workers. And the idea here is to not replicate exactly what's been done in the valley, but sort of expand the regional district's programming to develop something out in the coastal region that's geographically and culturally relevant here. So the handout in front of you, again, it has some little ideas for municipal governments. I'm happy to answer questions about that. But my main purpose today is to ask for the District of Tofino's participation on the Coastal Agricultural Roundtable. So I'll give you a quick overview of that. Basically, it's a formal opportunity for some high-level networking, policy discussion, project creation, and kind of a platform developing some primacy around agricultural and food initiatives in the coast. It will be a direct channel to the regional district, and then subsequently to the province. We've been working very strongly over the last number of years to try and adapt, change provincial policies and regulatory frameworks that can make it very challenging for smaller, remote communities, and for frameworks like marine and First Nations sort of harvesting practices, things like that, and get those included into the kind of framework around agriculture. So there'll be a facilitator to field questions about agriculture, to do research that's required, to share funding opportunities, examples of other models, activities that are going on around the province, and to make referrals for external or provincial supports as well. So it's expected that the roundtable will meet twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall. Our first meeting is set for November 13th in Ucluelet. We're still finalizing the agenda, but we expect to sort of hear from all the participants, find out their needs, ideas, look at, review and prioritize some potential projects that have come from the addendum and from subsequent conversations. We want to co-create the terms of reference so that, again, it really belongs to the people here and that all of the participants have a say in how this program rolls out. And then contribute to development of a strategic plan that will be sort of put forward to the roundtable subsequently. That's about all I have. I'd love to hear any of your questions or comments or ideas about the roundtable or about the program in general, or about what you guys need. Just always open to that.
Great, thanks very much, Heather. Any questions from members of council? Comments? Councillor Anderson, anything to add from your time?
No, I just, from working on the the committee that first put together the addendum. We worked with Heather as our facilitator. And I see this working group as being much similar to that type of working group, like as far as membership goes and type of interests that people bring to the table. So one of course, the difficulties on the West Coast is the challenges that came up during those sessions for land and then the soil types and the climate, of course, is not as conducive to agriculture as the Alberni Valley areas. So it takes special work in each community, and so yeah, I don't have any questions. I see the work as being good and continuing. Any moves that we can make towards food security is in the interest of the community, and that's been expressed by members of the community. So I'm not personally volunteering at the moment to work on this, but I see that the municipality should be involved, and it's not a great ask for 2 meetings a year. So,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. Yes, likewise, I think there's a really interesting link between this initiative and food security and emergency preparedness, and seeing all of the workshops and seminars that are starting to go along about being more prepared as community members for being cut off from services for a while, and how important being able to grow food and access wild foods is. So I know that it's a bit of a chicken and egg thing in a way, because normally when we appoint a representative to a committee or a roundtable, it's when we have the terms of reference before us. And then what you're asking though is for somebody to go and help co-create those terms of reference. So given that it's on the 13th of November, my suggestion to council would be to bring this back on the 22nd, and everyone can have some time to think about it, but that if we appoint one person to go to that and then the terms of reference are created, I don't know that would be the person who would then remain on it, but it would at least give us the opportunity to participate, which I think is really important. So I've had the privilege of seeing this develop all the way along from being at the ACRD, so it's nice to have you here and have the rest of council be brought up to speed on it too.
Thanks.
What are you okay with that approach? Yeah, good. All right, great. Thanks very much, Heather.
All right,
Yeah.
and so from that, it sounds like
Someone will
hopefully
come.
somebody will come.
Yeah.
Right. And I would just add, the addendum was really the planning overall.
Yeah.
And what we want to do is action it. And
Yeah.
these agriculture plans are around the province, and many of them sit on shelves. The regional district has been super proactive in actually putting these things forward. And we can't even know where we're going until we start going, although we can have a direction.
Yeah, and witnessing what the Alberni Valley Committee or Roundtable, whatever we want to call it, has done, and been able to provide some very specific recommendations and advice to the board that has then been able to go out and lobby the province for changes to make things better for Alberni Valley food growers and farmers has been really, really nice to see. So it's it's probably something we just haven't had on our radar enough, and now we are. So thank you for your proactive nature, because I know you're really into it.
Thanks. Really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Heather. Thanks for coming all the way out.
Thanks.
Okay, so that is the end of our delegation section, and we're going to move into correspondence, and we have a few items, some of which require some action and some of which don't. The first is a letter from Gary Cameron, who was our RCMP reservist this summer, and he provided some comments and some statistics and things, and I really appreciated his letter, and I'm glad that we have the opportunity to review it. Did anybody have any questions from it, or no? Any comment from Brent about working with the reservists this summer?
Working with the reservists is a fantastic opportunity. It provides a level of safety to the bylaw enforcement officers that is not there in their daily tasks. The reason this letter came to be was after a number of meetings with the bylaw team, including both reservists over the course of the summer, there was a lot of conversations from them about the level of risk that the bylaw officers are putting themselves in, especially on beach patrols in the evenings. This is a time where people are consuming alcohol, having fires, all sorts of other things. they do consider this to be the highest risk activity, and it's something that RCMP in general do not deal with. So my conversation with the reservist was, would you be willing to put some comments down that highlight the level of risk that the bylaw staff are putting themselves in on a daily basis? I don't feel that the letter really captured that. I think it actually minimizes it. He has said that he is happy to have more conversations about it, but I felt that it was important to bring that to an awareness for everybody that it is an extremely risky position that they put themselves in each day. So that was what that letter was about.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments or questions from council? No. Okay, thank you. The second is a letter from Maya Chorobik from the Community Energy Association with the details about the Climate Leaders Institute that takes place on November 7th and 8th. And so I asked for this to be put on the agenda because I wanted to ask your authorization to attend this on behalf of council. And being members of the Community Energy Association, the registration fees and all of that are waived, which is kind of nice. So that's why it's there. Did you have any questions or? Okay, need a motion. I do. So what I'm looking for is for council to authorize the mayor to attend the Climate Leaders Institute on November 7th and 8th, 2019, and be reimbursed for costs in accordance with our remuneration bylaw 1254. Thank you.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions about that? Thanks. It's I think that given what's on our strategic plan for this term, it will be a really good in-depth start to those kinds of conversations around the actual tools that municipalities have, and kind of complements a lot of the other work they've been doing. So appreciate it. Thank you. All right, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. And our next piece of correspondence is from Laura Loucks, who is the research director of the Clayoquot Biosphere Trust. And I see that Rebecca Hurwitz is in the audience today from the CBT, and a copy of the 2019 living wage report, and also correspondence on the vital conversation. So, any comments from council? Councillor Steer.
Well, there was comments, but it was, I wanted to ask Laura a couple things, but it was just in terms of the living wage had decreased, but it was specific to a family with 2 children, and I was curious if we, with the data that you have, if we have the ability to differentiate the different family types that we have. So I'm talking to Rebecca, but so that was something that I was curious to find out through them, if we could, for seniors living with fixed incomes and what that living wage looked like, et cetera, et cetera. So those were the notes, but yeah.
Well, I really appreciate this letter, but we do have the opportunity to invite somebody from the CBD to come and make a delegation if we want to have a conversation. It also might be something that's quite suitable for a committee of the whole. If there's something you want to dive into a little bit more. So the living wage, the way the living wage is calculated is has a very specific set of parameters. And so, but I know that from past delegations that the CBT has made, we've been able to ask and answer a lot of those questions around the fact, if I recall correctly, that although this is directly for a family with 2 children, aged 4 and 7, in a certain type of childcare situation, that roughly speaking, it does translate out to what a living wage is for many others. But Councillor McQuaid and I were chatting before the meeting. Councillor McQuaid, did you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, I think that I think the difference is $2.84 in the other direction, which I don't think is nominal by any stretch of the imagination. And I would really appreciate an opportunity to get a little bit deeper into this and to understand further if there's any history, or when we divide up the living wage and we look at such a small portion of our community, is it worth saying that people without children, and I understand that on average 2 people working 35 hours with a child 4 and 7 averages out to the living wage for everyone, but when I think the margin is a little bit bigger, I would like a better understanding as a member of the community, a wage earner and an employer, about what that means for me and the other people earning a living wage. So I'd be appreciative of having a delegation.
Would you like to make a motion to invite the CBT to present on the living wage at a future committee of the whole?
Sure, if I could ask for some guidance, that would be great. Or so moved.
Okay, great. Seconded, thank you very much. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor? Thank you, motion carried. Thank you, thanks very much for the letter, Rebecca and gang. Okay, so next is correspondence from Heather Zenner. She's the Land and Resources Coordinator at the ACRD, and she's looking for a letter of support for the ACRD's application to the Island Coastal Economic Trust to for partial funding to extend the bike path in Area C down at the south end near Ucluelet.
We'll move that we write a letter of support.
Thank you, Councillor McMaster.
Second.
Seconded. Any questions from this? Yes, Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the regional district is also applying to Bike BC
Yes,
and
it is.
elsewhere for
Yes.
the funding too. And I would encourage that we
Yeah.
write an enthusiastic letter of support.
It is about a $1.5 million project to do that final little gap, and with up to $1 million available from Bike BC, up to $200,000 from ICE-T. There's about a $300,000 funding gap, and lots of discussion going on about how to fill that. But I think everybody recognizes it's an important last piece of the puzzle to make the connection. So thanks for your enthusiasm. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. And then last but not least is the correspondence that we have from Leah Austin regarding the policy of non-enforcement for noise complaints. And we, of course, heard from Leah in our 2-minute section before too. So any questions from council or comments? Yes, Councillor Anderson.
I voted in favor of staff's recommendation on the report to move towards a non-enforcement policy, with the understanding that staff would continue to work with the Tofino Bus Company to mitigate some of the problems that are arising, the conflicts between the residential and the industrial use. So I don't feel that the letter is this letter and other input that we've received since doesn't seem to capture that feeling that the district is continuing to work on mitigating these conflicts. So I would like, I guess, some assurance that we are continuing to work with them to mitigate these problems and will continue to work with them. Otherwise, I'm no longer going to support a non-enforcement policy. So that's my call.
Okay, thank you. So not to put you on the spot now, Brent, if you want to wait to speak to this when you bring something forward to council, but did you have any comments now?
Sure, perhaps I'll just.
Sure, yeah, please.
Do you have
I'm not putting you on the spot because you're prepared. Okay.
First of all, I would like to thank Ms. Austin and Mr. Smallwood for their comments and the letter writing and the videos, and that I haven't seen the videos, but it is important that we get the feedback so that we can continue to work with everybody's interests in mind. And thank you for asking what we're doing and encouraging that we continue to work. So I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding, and hopefully I can provide some clarification. So for starters, a policy of non-enforcement is not what it sounds, that we pass a policy of non-enforcement and that means we all get to breathe a sigh of relief that we don't have to deal with it anymore. What we're hoping with the policy of non-enforcement is that we'll actually provide strict guidelines to allow for maintenance, safety inspections, and other special circumstances without penalty. So we're not talking daily operations where we just allow people to break our current bylaws with noise and those sorts of things, and we just don't bother to communicate with them. I will be meeting with the owner, Travis Wilson, next week when he's in town. We'll be looking to discuss noise mitigation efforts that have taken place to date, looking to discuss strategies on new noise abatement ideas that Mr. Wilson will be bringing forward himself, suggestions on how we can improve and get consistent and open communication about maintenance needs, timing, and outcomes, and new strategies for warming the buses without the need for extended idling, and of course air quality management as well too. So that's two parts: identifying what our actual air quality is and how we can work with that as well too. So I definitely understand that this is an extremely challenging situation that we're all trying to work our way through, and there's no clear path to find a solution here. So Typically what we do with bylaws when we are trying to solve a challenging problem is we go external and we look and see what's been done in other communities. And just like in the past, we've done that again too. Just like Mr. Smallwood suggesting that Vancouver has banned diesel buses and had everybody go with electric. We looked around as well too, and there are many communities that just outright create exemptions for buses, primarily when they're in their long-term parking or their depot, as they refer to it. The other thing that we do as well is, for enforcement, we use the bylaw notice and adjudication system. So what that means is if we provide somebody with a bylaw notice or a ticket, if they choose to dispute it, it goes to Nanaimo for adjudication. The adjudicators are from the Nanaimo area, and practice through this municipality for years prior to my arrival was to try and work with bylaws that are similar to areas where the adjudication is taking place so that adjudicators are familiar with it. It doesn't seem something completely different from what other areas are using, and to try and work with that as well too. So having said that, we looked around at a number of different communities, and Nanaimo is one of them actually that they say very clearly, council considers that the access to below cause noises or sounds that are objectionable disturb the quiet and peace, and that one of those things being in the care and control of any vehicle except buses and trucks, which creates or emits noise, as well as idling continuously, running of a diesel engine, truck or bus for more than 15 minutes at the same location, except where the truck or bus is located in a garage or depot intended to be used for long-term parking. So all the examples that we look at, other municipalities are creating full-on exemptions. That's not what we're trying to do, and I apologize if the term policy of non-enforcement gives that impression. We are really looking to try and find structure that we can work within, that we can hold the bus company accountable, but we can still allow them to provide the essential service to our community. Hopefully that provides a little bit of clarification.
It helps a lot. Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions? I answered all my questions. No? Okay. Thanks very much, Brent. That's really helpful, and we'll look forward to hearing back from how things go. All right. Okay, good. Okay. All right, so that brings us to the end of our correspondence section, and next we go into presentations and reports, and first is our invited delegation from Nancy Cameron from Tourism Tofino. Thanks. Welcome, Nancy.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Thanks very much for the opportunity to present our one-year tactical plan for 2020. The detailed plan is in your meeting package, and it consists of 3 sections. Section 1 is the 5-year strategic plan, which is reviewed and updated annually. Section 2 is the 2020 project plan, which includes more detailed information on our tactics, objectives, timelines. And Section 3 is the 2020 budget. So for the purposes of this presentation, I'll focus on the higher level, Section 1, and then also on the budget, Section 3. So as we know, tourism is a very exciting, vibrant, and critical industry that contributes much to our community. In fact, it creates by far the most jobs, in the amount of 1,720 full-time equivalent positions, equaling $60 million in wages. Our visitors spend $296 million annually at Tofino businesses, which pays for these wages and allows our businesses and residents to prosper, and as a result, our community to thrive. Tourism Tofino is proud to embrace the power and importance of tourism and continue to contribute to its ongoing success by ensuring that Tofino is always top of mind, and as our vision states, is recognized as one of North America's premier year-round destinations. Our mission is to generate customers for our members and economic benefits for our community while recognizing our responsibilities to residents, the environment, and our guests. And every activity that we engage in takes this to mind. Our 5-year strategic direction consists of 5 major categories of work, starting with governance and corporate responsibility. Our value statement for this category is to operate in a fiscally and operationally responsible manner, to be financially stable and transparent, to operate with excellence, and to have a very engaged board of directors that represents our members' interests. Our strategies for 2020 include ensuring that our society documentation, financial statements, and tactical plans are all available to members, and they're posted on our website. We're increasing our non-MRD2 revenues by creating member advertising opportunities and growing our retail sales at the Visitor Centre, utilizing Canadian accounting standards in our society financial management, reporting to our members annually at our AGM, and reviewing our activities, our results, and our financial statements, maintaining our member communication through our real-time industry news blog, conducting an annual member survey and encouraging their input, and having, of course, an organized and productive board, which they are. The second major category is marketing. Our value statement is to generate visitor demand aligned with community capacity and resident values. The two goals here are to increase overnight visitation during the spring, fall, and winter in a sustainable manner, and at times when businesses in the community have capacity and growth will not negatively impact the resident way of life. The second goal is to protect our current levels of summer business. Overall, we know that over 40% of our visitors are on their first trip to Tofino, so we must keep regenerating this batch of new visitors each year through various forms of marketing, while reminding the others that it's time to return for another visit. This chart shows our marketing objectives in the form of an accommodation occupancy chart. So the dark blue line shows our 2014 occupancy rates. The green is the 2018 occupancy, the red 2019 year-to-date, and the light blue dashed line is our 2022 target. A target focused mainly on spring and fall growth with some winter growth. So occupancy is a key indicator, but it does change based on the increases and decreases in supply, and we've seen that this year. Jamie's Duffin Cove and some rooms at the Mat were closed this year, which resulted in a reduction in supply of 5%. So although you can see our summer occupancy was strong this year, we had fewer units available, and so fewer visitors. This year was also the first year that BC Family Day fell on the same day as Alberta's. Because of this change, BC lost the ability to have 2 long weekends in its core markets of BC and Alberta. And you can see the considerable, you can see the considerable drop here between 2018, which is the green line, and 2019 because of this situation and the change back to having a consistent family day in both provinces. Our marketing strategies include infusing consistent branding that resonates with our target audience. The audience is not defined by age or gender. It is those people that hold the values and interests that align with Tofino's. We use a multi-channel promotional strategy to inspire new and return visitors and generate brand advocacy. Our advertising is targeted to travelers who appreciate that raw power of the elements. They are looking to connect and respect where they travel, so they're very considerate travelers. That's who we're targeting. They want the feeling of rejuvenation and the ability to connect with nature, and they want to learn about Tofino's culture and heritage. We will also be placing more resources behind some new sectors that have the potential to generate non-peak and midweek travel, including the meetings and retreat sector and the adult learning experiences. And we will continue to work with our industry partners, such as Tourism Vancouver Island, Destination BC, and Destination Canada, to expand our reach and increase our exposure in long-haul and international markets where we don't market. Next category is visitor services. Value statement for visitor services is to welcome visitors to our community as we would friends to our home. Our goal is to increase our visitor spending, longer stays, and repeat visits. Our new visitor center has allowed us to connect with far more people than we have been able to in past. And each of those interactions provides an opportunity to influence these visitors to see and do more, to go on another excursion that they may not have known about, to go to a new restaurant, to visit our shops and our galleries. And this in turn extends their stays and encourages them to come back again for another longer stay. Having highly knowledgeable staff is necessary to optimize this opportunity. And we're aiming to be an employer of choice for seasonal staff, as many of our businesses are, and retain them for more than 1 year. Our staff must have excellent product knowledge. And not only do they go through a set training program, but we also get them out to all of our member businesses over time so that they know about the experiences firsthand. And in 2020, we'll grow our retail sales to support the higher costs of operating our far larger center. And we hope to activate and program this center during the quieter months to bring people to it as well. And of course, we'll also continue to use mobile and social media outreach to engage with visitor inquiries that are coming across those channels. On to destination and visitor experience management. Our value is that our visitors will experience positive impressions from our work. A goal that has been on our list for several years now is complete. And after only 3 months of operation, the new center has served double the visitors it did during the same period last year. And we expect this to continue. We're thrilled with it, and we know that it is an important and effective new tourism asset for Tofino. We have a few more goals, however, in this category, and these are to build knowledge with our seasonal staff and visitors about local values and expected behaviors, to support experience enhancement and development, and to be an informed tourism community. Our strategies are to activate these goals are to continue to sponsor the Chamber's Tofino Ambassador Program, build easy-to-use staff onboarding tools for our members' use in the form of videos, educate visitors on destination values, behaviors, and regulations, so we'll continue to build on our current tools, such as the welcome brochure, our tips and regulations flat sheet, our website, and Every Drop of Water Counts program, with a video for accommodations to utilize with their booking confirmations. So this will provide their guests with information on what to expect when they come to Tofino, our local regulations, in a very nice, gentle way, and values to reinforce responsible travel. We will work to enhance destination knowledge with visitor-centered users through displays and environmentally friendly merchandise, continue to support festivals and events, and expand the profile of arts and culture in our promotion. We will also continue to support the shuttle bus service, of course, which is a great service and has been spectacularly successful this year with the expansion. And we will conduct regular research to inform our decision-making and communicate the value of tourism. And the last category, collaboration and strategic alliances. So our value is to collaborate, communicate, and coordinate with members, industry, and community partners on common objectives. Our goals are to, of course, collaborate and coordinate tourism development and management with the district and members, support the Tourism Industry Association of BC and the Chamber of Commerce on tourism advocacy issues, and to share and align with Tourism Vancouver Island, Destination BC, and Destination Canada. Our strategies are to participate in tourism-related initiatives, such as the Tourism Master Plan and CDAC, and our work also needs to align with other municipally endorsed plans, strategies, and reports, such as the Vision to Action, Arts, Culture, and Heritage, Festivals and Events, and the CBT's Vital Signs Report. We will engage on issues of importance to the tourism industry and request for support, and we will continue to work with our local stakeholders, our province, and our region, and national tourism partners for the greatest positive results. Now on to the budget. So you have a detailed budget in your package, but I've summarized it here in just a few graphs. This one shows our 2020 operating revenues. So we're very dependent on the MRDT. 91% of our operating revenue comes from the MRDT. Now this is the MRDT collected from fixed accommodations with the exception of Airbnb, as this MRDT collected from Airbnb and short-term rentals goes to the District of Tofino for affordable housing. So we also get 6% from our retail sales and cooperative advertising and other, and 3% from federal and provincial grants, for a total operating budget of $1,343,077. And our expenses are divided into 4 buckets. Marketing, 49%, visitor services, 27%, administration, 18%, and destination and visitor experience management at 6%. Now, I've put this slide together to show the total MRDT that's collected in the District of Tofino. So of the total collected, which is estimated to be in 2020, 1,977,140, 33% is invested in destination marketing, 13% used to operate the visitor center, 4% will go to destination and visitor experience management activities, 12% will be used for Tourism Tofino administration and overhead, 25% to pay for the construction of the new visitor center, though this is financing our loan, and 13% to the District of Tofino for affordable housing initiatives. And that's how all of the MRDT collected is separated out. And with that, and this beautiful picture and sentiment, that concludes my presentation of the 2020 tactical plan.
Great, thanks very much, Nancy. Open up for questions, comments. Councillor Stewart?
Sure. Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate the work you've done in the presentation, and just last week or 2 weeks at UBCM, your leadership in this area was noted by many communities that we have spoken to. Came out loud and clear. I was interested in your mission statement and to generate customers for our members and economic benefits for our community, while recognizing our responsibilities to residents, the environment, and our guests. And I was curious as to what you feel those responsibilities are.
Great question. Back in end of 2017 and 2018, we went through a very significant resident engagement process where we spoke to a lot of different people from all walks of life, some directly involved in the tourism industry as owner-operators, some employees, and some retired people, some people who were who were in the service industry or working for the hospital, that sort of thing. So we really were able to talk to everybody to get a sense of what their future from their perspective looked like for Tofino. And we have, as a tourism organization, an obligation to make sure that we are aligned with that future and that we are not on a different track. Visitors come to a destination because of the nature and the character of a community, and that means its residents and its infrastructure and everything that surrounds it. So Tofino has a marvelous character, and we can't change that. Or Tourism Tofino can't play a role in that. So out of this engagement process came some very significant points, and that was this idea of responsible tourism, making sure that we are able to attract people who have the same value set as residents. Now, it's not perfect science, but through technology and advertising, we can, through our messages, target people of like mind. Those people of like mind tend to not litter, be respectful of our environment, appreciate what's here, and making sure that they are treading very lightly in the destination, so they have a lower impact than people who are not aligned with those values. And we know that through our activities, we are doing our best to make sure that we're trying to attract that element of the traveling population. Does that answer your question?
That's pretty good, yes. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, Councillor Anderson.
I noticed that the construction will continue to be paid for the visitor center in 2020. How many more years before that loan is paid, or whatever
Right. We have a 5-year loan. We anticipate that the center will be paid for by the end of 2022.
Thank you. I just want to make a closing comment, just building on what Councillor Steer said, that when we were at UBCM a couple of weeks ago, I get to participate in the Resort Municipality Initiative meetings with the mayors and CAOs and the ministry staff and the minister herself. And then we had a meeting with the minister, and there was also a panel at UBCM this year. For the very first time, the province sponsored a panel on tourism for communities up north that were trying to divest themselves from the forest industry and diversify into tourism. And for me, it was a real eye-opener of what it must have been like to be on that front end of thinking what is the promise of tourism for our community. And so to echo what Councillor Steer said, Tofino really is seen as a real leader in how to embrace the tourism industry, but try to do it in a way that retains the values of the community and be community first and tourism second. And I, in my time as mayor, I've just really observed this shift in tourism Tofino, and to see the values-based marketing, beginning to diversify into adult-based education and learning opportunities, into conferences and meetings, which I would argue is also educational really in its nature. And the next big frontier to me still remains, it's the Indigenous piece, and how we lift up Indigenous tourism operators and how we more effectively share the benefits of this industry with a group of people who really want to be a part of it. So I just want to say thank you. It was a fantastic presentation, and I think Tourism Tofino has a lot to be proud of.
Thanks very much. Appreciate that.
Good. All right. Moving on then. Interestingly enough, we're going to go into, Nyla. Sorry, Peter, you're next. You're after. All right, so this is the consideration of adoption of the Loan Authorization Bylaw, the municipal portion of the wastewater treatment plant project. Thank you, Nyla. Take it away.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Mayor and Council. I just want to begin by saying that the subject of borrowing for the wastewater treatment plant has been and continues to be an extremely difficult topic for the community. It continues to be a difficult topic to communicate on, to consult on, and for staff and councils to make decisions on. I just want to encourage everyone in the audience today and those that may listen to the video of this meeting later today to consult the district's website for information on this matter, or to give me a call to talk about it, to discuss, to have more information. We're a small community, and we have the benefit and opportunity of being able to communicate with each other effectively and efficiently than in the larger city center, so I hope we continue to take advantage of that. So while adoption of a bylaw is typically a straightforward process, this one definitely requires more discussion and more consideration given the magnitude of its result. So today we are considering adoption of a loan authorization bylaw for the wastewater treatment plant in the amount of $16,002,000. Throughout this process, the impact, it has not been lost on staff or council what this impact would mean to the taxpayer. We know how much taxes will increase if we were to borrow these funds in their entirety and to lock in this amount and to require the taxpayer to bear the full burden of repayment of the principal and interest. Staff and council have worked hard on obtaining a grant for this project in the amount of just over $40 million. So what this may mean is we may need to borrow up to $16 million or we may not. So what it means to adopt today's bylaw is that we have access to up to $16 million, and this will assist us with cash for during the construction process or during the construction stage of this process. It allows us to pay interest only on any amounts that we draw from this amount, from up to $16,002,000. And then we have the decision, we are able to continue to apply for grant funding, for capital grant funding should it become available, and we don't need to lock into this amount lock into this debt amount or the final debt amount up to $16 million at a later date when the construction phase of the project is complete. What this also means is we need to work really hard, and staff continues to work hard, council continues to work hard on finding other ways for repayment of the debt outside of tax dollars. And we have made significant progress with that, and we hope to have more information as we go through the financial planning process to share with the community. So today we are recommending that we move forward with adoption of the loan authorization bylaw so we can have access to these resources during the construction phase of the process of the project. And we will continue to communicate and consult with the community on what this impact will be. And we will continue as staff to come back to council and talk about the next steps in terms of the short-term borrowing and when we need to make a decision to lock in the borrowing. I'm happy to answer any questions before council considers adoption.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, just to sort of try and put more information out there. This borrowing is for the entire plan, which includes all all the infrastructure associated with it, from the outfall to the rerouting of sewage lines, the composting, the composting facility associated with it, as well as the treatment plant. Am I correct?
It includes the wastewater treatment plant, the conveyance system, and it also includes the outfalls. Composting is not a component of this amount.
Okay. Because what I continue to hear is just the plan. I don't think people have captured the whole scope of the work being done. And then comparing it with a former, as we heard today, a former treatment plant at $6 million, which was built for a different size community that probably did not connect with parks, connect with local communities outside of Tofino at the time, and probably didn't consider all these other components. That I don't think is a fair comparison. So I just wanted to sort of clear that up. Also, I'd like to sort of clear up the notion that 20 million from the province, 20 million and 20 million. 16 million is what I'm seeing here. But what is the actual component financed by the federal and provincial bodies? It's more than 66% from what I understand.
22 roughly from the federal, 18 from the province, and that comprises 73.
It's 73.3%.
Okay, which is more than usual. It's usually given in infrastructure programs. It's usually 33.
Yeah, over the years, the funding that's been available from senior levels of government has kind of flux depending on government. At one time as municipalities, we felt kind of lucky to get 33% total from senior levels of government. 50-50 became a little bit more realistic a bit more recently, and the 73.3% is almost as good a funding level as we've ever seen. We had 83% funded by senior levels of government for a design, which is the best that I've seen in my career. So it is toward the high end of the grants that I've seen over the last 25 years.
And then just a comment from what we heard earlier at the beginning, from one of the speakers, saying that we had a former liquid waste management plan that could be amended. I don't believe we ever got to a point where we had a liquid waste management plan before. And from what I recall, we had worked a long ways towards it, but I'm not sure what was being talked about. Was that the plan to dump it in the ocean? Is that what's being talked about? Or I mean, we'd worked a long ways towards it, but I don't recall ever.
So just for I want to say 10, 15 years ago, the district completed a liquid waste management plan, referred to the province, and the province rejected that plan.
Yeah.
We completed a plan, and I'm sorry, I don't have the time frames. We completed a plan approximately 3 years ago and started our design based on that plan as we got to level B cost estimates. So, sorry, the plan that was completed 3-4 years ago was approved by the province. And that's a very critical step. As we got into actually designing the plant, designing the conveyance system, we found that costs were beyond what, as we refined those costs were beyond what was anticipated through the liquid waste management plan. So we did approach the province to amend the plan that was adopted 3 years ago, and that was approved in the last few months.
Okay. So we did have a liquid waste management, but we did adopt it, but it wasn't approved by the province. And could we have worked on that more? I don't know. I think it was out of date by the time we picked it up.
One of the significant problems, significant reasons why the plan was rejected by the province, and there was about a 2-page letter from the province outlining shortcomings with this plan a decade ago. But it proposed to implement waste treatment at some date in the far future that was just not acceptable to, I think, to either the feds or the province. And there were a number of other smaller things, but it was in talking with the folks that were involved in writing that letter of rejection to us, the timing and the completeness of our plan was an issue, but the timing was a very significant issue.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor Chalmers? Do you mind giving me a brief refresher on how quashing period works, like the amount needed? I know you went over this before, but just a brief.
Yeah, so once the bylaw is adopted, we do enter a 1-month quashing period where if a member of the community may reject the decision, they can apply to say so, and then we would have to address that matter. How it exactly happens, I don't have that information here.
It's not
a little
simple.
reluctant to speak to that in its entirety, but I could send you more information on the process should we receive something.
Any other questions? Are you able to speak briefly to why borrowing of this nature for wastewater treatment is not subject to elector assent under the community charter?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it is required because the treatment is required under the Environmental Management Act. The community charter allows us to be exempt from seeking approval of the electors. And so the amounts and the capital costs of the plant were included in our amendment to the liquid waste management plan, and it was approved. We don't have to go down the road of approval of the electors because it is a requirement to have the plan.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
I just more of a comment, and it was one of my questions, was it was under the Environmental Management Act that we fall under, and you've answered that. It comes more now to the question of the communication of these plans and the finances that have been associated with it. And I've been following it for a few years before being elected, and I found it to be transparent and to be open. But there has been questions raised as to the effectiveness of that communication. And I would love to find out more as to why that is, and if there are better ways of communicating this information moving forward to ensure that the optics and the transparency of this issue is clear to the public in general. And obviously,
yeah, I'm always open to feedback on better ways to communicate and the frequency at which we communicate. We have been putting information on our website. We're consistent with that information. We put a lot of time and energy into a tax guide this year, a newsletter that went out with all the tax notices. I have received a few phone calls, not many, but I always offer that as a suggestion to talk through the topic because it is difficult to understand. It's a lot of information. And we have the ability to send out emails with information, letting the community know that information is available on our website and when new information is available. But yeah, we are we are, and I am open to other suggestions on how to communicate. We also have open houses, and we will continue to do that through this financial planning process. Like I said at the beginning, it's a difficult topic to communicate on. It's difficult to wrap up and talk about in even an hour, but we have to try, and we are committed to continue to try to simplify the information or to make it as understandable as possible. So suggestions are always welcome.
Thanks.
I just wanted to speak briefly, and is that okay?
Yeah, of course.
And to say thank you, and to point to something that both yourself and Councillor Steer have alluded to. And as I was reading through this for the third time last night, I think that it becomes a little bit easier for council members to read this through and see no problems, because we've done a lot of work around it. We've spent a lot of time with you. We spent a lot of time in council chambers. We spent a lot of time speaking to constituents. But I think that when you're in this room and you have views espoused as diverse as concerned taxpayers, tourism, Tofino, and then you have yourself here that speak at it, it kind of highlights just the diversity of really strong opinions about this. And that sitting here and automatically approving a loan bylaw that will, endorse $16 million for a very small community can seem really flippant without speaking at length about it. But after reading it for the third time, I think that the work that's been done around this and the representation of this work in that bylaw is incredible. And I'm really grateful that for however complex this discussion is, that we have you and these council members and this staff, and really incredibly passionate members of our community to come forward and to provide those balanced points of view. I'm a fan of community contribution, and remembering that what's espoused in this room and the discussions that are had are not the only ones that are had with the members at this council table, that we speak to everyone and that we try and bring those views forward when we vote on this. And I'm just really grateful that everyone at this table can bring up those views in however short form, in however small of a meeting, before we move on something like this. So I'm really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's consider the motion.
I will move the recommendation that council approve the District of Tofino Loan Authorization Bylaw number 1253/2018 be adopted.
Second. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any final comment on the motion? All right, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. That's everyone. Motion carried. So closing comment, I'll just say I think the quality of the conversation and in particular your remarks there, Councillor McQuaid, are very high, and probably one of the next best things we can do in this process and in our budgeting process this fall is to give that more open opportunity to talk about affordability and taxes and the budget and this borrowing and everything all together through a town hall meeting. And so I'll work with our staff and we can talk about that, how that can be done, and bring it to council. And I think, a town hall meeting is something that's more council-led than staff-led. Staff will support us, but for us to have a wider, bigger conversation with the community, and to your point, Councillor McQuaid, to all the different perspectives out there, we'll have that conversation, and I look forward to it. Okay. All right, so we're going to move on to a development permit for Brown Dog Properties, aka Duff and Cove Resort, I think. Just a nice name. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you. Good morning. So what I have for you this morning is a development permit for the owners of Brown Dog Properties. It's commonly known as the Duff and Cove Resort, undergoing a very major renovation at the moment. You might recognize this from first meeting in August, as there was a development variance permit for this very same building permit application. It's quite a small renovation to an existing structure, but it's dragged a fair amount of permitting into the process as we move through it here. But this will be probably one of the last steps that the applicant need before they can adjust the roof line. So a quick review of development permits. We're granted authority as a local government through Section 488 of the Local Government Act. The idea of a development permit area is to establish objectives, define the area, lay out a rationale, and define exemptions and guidelines for that particular area. It's basically just a mechanism that we use to control development in particularly sensitive areas that have been identified on the official community plan map. So these are always issued by council resolution. There's been a number of them that have been delegated over the past couple of months. Council may recall there was much discussion about development permits over the last little while. And this particular development permit is one that has been decided that needs to be issued by council, which is why I'm before you today. So it is a downtown Campbell Street development permit. The area is shown on the map there. It's the yellow area, so it basically covers both sides of the street, Campbell Street, basically from 4th Street west. The location of this particular development permit application is at 221 Campbell Street. It also is 215 Campbell Street, but mostly the entire property is known as 221 Campbell. And it is within the development permit area. So the proposal is the renovation of an existing building. We're looking to extend the roof line. The applicants have a valid development permit as well as a valid building permit for the major renovations they're doing. This was something that was added on after. As it's a new building permit, it triggers the requirement for a new development permit. The variance permit was previously granted by council on August 13th, 2019, and this property is zoned C5, it's a commercial district. A couple photos that were sort of drawn on photos that were provided by the applicant's architect. The new roof coverage is basically just kind of extending this roof line to cover that outer staircase you can see in the photo on the left. The idea is that it's going to protect visitors and clients of the Deaf and Cove Resort as they climb up to the second story. So it's a form and character development permit area. The main requirements are outside of the application is to submit a full set of plans and site plans and all those kinds of any other related information to staff. Staff then take that to the design review panel. The design review panel met to discuss this application on August 14th, 2019. There was no comments from the design review panel, and they recommended that the development permit be approved. So development permit 0719 would authorize the following alterations, basically the renovation of the existing structure in order to extend the roof. That's really the only thing that we're talking about here. So a fairly minor renovation, particularly in contrast to a lot of the other things that are happening on the property. If there's any questions or comments, I can see.
I don't think there's any questions.
Yeah, no, down this one, a little while.
Go ahead.
Yeah, make sure I get the right one. The council approve and issue development permit number 07-19 to Brown Dog Properties for certain alterations on amended lot 2, District DD 2692241, block 10, section 114, Clayoquot District Plan 1615, in the form attached as appendix 1 to the report titled Development Permit Brown Dog Properties Limited 221 Campbell Street, dated October 8th, 2019. Wow.
Thank you, Councillor Steer. Seconded, Councillor Thomas, thank you. Okay, seeing no questions, all in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. All right. Yeah, can we take a 2-minute break, please? Is that okay? 2-minute recess. All right. Okay, good. 2-minute recess. Unanimous consent. 3 minutes. So I meant to warn you, so that was might happen. Yeah.
It's not anymore. Yeah, and they have this Port Alberni and Gold River campuses, but not Gillie.
Yes. Yes.
That'd be amazing. Or Gold River, why not? Sure.
Your question after my question is what I was trying to get. Oh, thank you for that. That's okay. It's all good instead of doing the exact opposite.
Did anyone listen to Kim Campbell on CBC Instagram?
I did. The only thing that really bugged me was the Deary, but other than that, I really enjoyed listening to her.
Reiterating that women just won't be taken seriously in dresses.
She was quite
She
epic.
was quite adamant about that, like,
I
you know
know.
what, you can pick what you want, but if you don't want to be taken seriously, wear a dress. I was just like, you really are doubling down on this.
And she kept calling her Deary. Deary? Anyways, she says what she thinks.
I really don't want to just
She
be former
reminds
Prime
me-
Minister Kim Campbell, who does.
Right. She reminds me of Grandma Mark. Doesn't she? Like, just her style and her way of speaking.
Yeah, a bit wild. I was like, I thought it was an old interview from maybe 15 years ago.
Right.
And then she's like, you said this on Twitter. And I was like, oh no, it's
modern.
for today.
Yeah.
Newspapers used to.
There's got to be a way to change stuff.
That's just like a thing for everybody.
Started in Vancouver, it was in 9. Slaves to Germany.
Okay. Anything we're bringing to council on the 22nd?
I will.
Okay, all right.
Hearing will be on.
Great. Okay, we're all good to go.
Seek to quash, but it has to be like there's a procedural problem. So what it means is they won't advance the
All right, so our next item, 8.4, is the water treatment plant filters. Thank you very much to our staff for the report. Did anybody have any questions about it? No questions? Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Sure.
I just,
No,
it
don't
was
be
on
sorry.
the filters,
Yeah.
I just had, Ricardo,
Yeah.
right there. I just had some questions in terms of the, those original filters from 2009. It says in your report that they were overdue for replacement. I was just curious, do we have a replacement schedule for these, what I would consider fairly critical pieces of infrastructure?
No, it's basically going through the first cycle of equipment for this. Realistically, we probably used the treatment plant less, operated it less than what was intended to be used for, which is kind of the reason that a lot of the equipment has been able to be extended to its current state. This and probably the flocculator are some of the pieces that are still the very original components. There's been small pump replacements and small components replacements at the time, but this is starting at the beginning of large equipment replacements with this one.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
I move the recommendation that staff be authorised to prepare an amendment to the 2019-2023 financial plan in the amount of $47,000 for the replacement of water filters at McMaster's water treatment plant to be funded from the Water Capital Bylaw Reserve Fund from funds collected through the capital and infrastructure levy.
Thank you, Councillor McMaster. And Councillor Chalmers and Anderson, or Steer, or whoever seconded. It is seconded. Okay, any final questions or comments? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Thank you. All right, design review panel meeting minutes from August 14th for receipt. Moved and seconded. Any questions from the minutes? All in favor? Thank you. None opposed? Motion carried. Meeting minutes. First, the meeting minutes from the Tofino Recreation Commission meeting that was held September 18th for receipt.
Receipt.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any questions except for the recommendation that we'll consider in a moment? No? All right, all in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? None? Motion carried. And then the recommendation that came out of the TRC meeting that staff be authorized to develop additional funding options to support the Kids Access Fund program. Any comments on that before considering, or anything you wanted to add?
No, I think it's straightforward. It's
Yeah.
just to look at some of the options to have a more secure funding base for that. And there's going to be, at our next rec commission meeting, there will be some discussions around this, but we would like to look at some of those options for more sustained funding on that.
Great. Great. Thank you. So moved by Councillor Chalmers, seconded by Councillor McMaster, that staff be authorized to develop additional funding options to support the Kids Access Fund program. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Okay, so now we have 3 bylaws for adoption, consideration of adoption, and the first is the District of Tofino Fees and Charges Bylaw number 1271, 2019.
Move adoption.
Second. Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any questions from that? All in favor? Thank you. Any opposed? Motion carried. The next is adoption of the District of Tofino False Alarm Bylaw 1272, 2019.
Move adoption.
Second. Thank you. Adoption moved and seconded. Any final questions from that? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. And last, the District of Tofino Bylaw Notice Amendment Bylaw number 1107.12, 2019 for adoption. Move adoption.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any comment, question? No? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Okay, so now we're going to 3 matters of business initiated by council members. And first is the notice of motion and the little report that I provided, so I'll read it out. My recommendation is that the District of Tofino establish a fund to be known as the Tofino Community Fund with the Clayoquot Biosphere Trust in memory of Councillor Dorothy Baert in the amount of $5,000 to be funded from the 2019 council promo budget, from the remainder of the 2019 council grants, and if necessary, from contingency. And that the Mayor and Chief Administrative Officer be authorized to execute the deed of gift as attached to the notice of motion dated October 8th, 2019. Do I have a seconder? Second. Thank you, Councillor Chalmers. Did anyone have any questions from this? No. Okay, thank you very much. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. And I just want to say especially thank you to you, Councillor McMaster, because I know that you and Dorothy spent some time speaking with the CDT about this idea months and years past, so it's nice to see it come to fruition.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, so now we have a verbal report on the Vancouver Island Regional Library meeting from Councillor McMaster.
Well, not a lot to say. I've included the financial plan for the next 5 years. The key thing for Tofino is that next year the per capita increase goes up to almost $4, $3.97, and the way to work this number out is related to the population of the town and the assessment, and of course we all know assessments and properties in this town have gone up, so that really accounts for the increase. The other thing is, if you go through the budget, you will notice that Tofino is in 2021 is in there for a new library. That doesn't mean to say it will happen in 2021, but I feel that the more we do to facilitate it, the better chance we have of it happening.
Thank you. And thanks for providing all the reports. Did anyone have any questions or not? No. Good, thanks. And then our final matter in the open meeting is just a little roundtable from those of us who went to UBCM with just maybe 2 minutes on the highlights for you. Who would like to start? Okay, Councillor Chalmers.
I thought it was great. I learned a lot. One thing I did want to bring up is maybe writing a letter and follow-up. I know you talked about writing one with one minister, but maybe with the emergency planning and a few of the requests that we had. I don't know if I need to make a motion or anything, just a minute.
I don't know, what do you think, Elise?
Are you asking for staff to write a letter of follow-up, or are you thinking that councillors?
Well, probably council, because stuff, well, what's traditional, I guess.
It's a little bit of a shared thing.
Yeah, if you'd like staff involvement, then a motion.
Sure, why don't you make a motion?
Okay, I'll make a motion to work with staff to write a letter following up on some of our requests regarding the emergency planning
Thank you. Yeah, to the minister.
To the
or
minister.
Secretary.
Minister.
Parliamentary Secretary for Emergency Preparedness. Thank you. Yes, thank you. All right. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you. Great. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. Anything else you want to highlight from UBCM?
I'm looking forward to next year, having a bit more of an understanding going into it and being able to plan sort of better what I thought. I got a lot of I got things of what I didn't expect and less of what I was expecting to learn. So
Nice.
okay.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Councilor McClure?
Yeah, I think it was a great opportunity to connect municipal issues to more provincial and federal levels, and kind of see where we land in the greater scope of where the political climate is in British Columbia, and to connect with people who it was great to be surrounded by people who are really passionate about municipal affairs. And yeah, I also had a question to the gentleman that was here on behalf of North Island College that had asked for a highlight of his program towards the Minister of Education. And I was wondering if throughout the year we keep any regular requests in any particular spot so that we can ensure that, okay.
It's been right there.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Thanks for flagging it.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, if we do keep like a list of topics that have been asked for, just so that prior to UBCM we can compile them and either see where they overlap or what's still worth bringing forward.
Great.
Thank you. It was an awesome opportunity, and I like Councillor Chalmers, I'm really looking forward to going next year with a greater understanding of where I can be impactful.
Thank you. Councillor Steer?
Yes, it was a great experience. Of course, one of the takeaways that I was hearing quite often at the provincial level, as well as from other communities, the importance of collaboration, especially with our regional players, and specifically in our area with the communities that surround us, including our First Nation neighbours in our area. How important that will be to move many of the projects forward that we're encountering. Our speed dating sessions with the ministers was interesting, where you get your 15 minutes and generally 10 minutes for them to talk and 5 minutes for us to state our case. It was interesting understanding how that one-on-one relationship, where they put a town's name and face directly to the issues that we need. I saw the value in it. Sometimes, anyways, there is value in that process, and I can continue that to be strategic in who we, in going next year, that we're very strategic with those ministers, as I think we did this time. And then, of course, the whole resolution process was as interesting as the 276 resolutions that were there were interesting. I found the process to be cumbersome in the sense that the issues that we really need to bring to the province, I think is through the process that is very diluted. And I was hoping, and we've had conversations, and there was rumblings at UBCM of a reform of that process, and to make it a much more effective process in stating our issues to the province and prioritizing on those. So some form of reform, I think, is definitely needed in that process, as interesting as it was. And then, of course, that one-on-one with communities, recognizing the similarities and the differences that we have, making those connections, interestingly enough, with the interior communities that are struggling with, right now, a very specific issue of the collapse of the forest industry, and having, interestingly enough, some friends that I haven't seen in 30 years that are on councils, and that was great, but their needs are very serious, and we're in a little bit of a bubble sometimes, I think, out here in Tofino, and to have that broader perspective was extremely valuable for me as a councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson?
Well, as always, I found lots of interesting clinics and workshop sessions to attend. I kind of focused around reconciliation and climate change, both in what I attended and in my networking sort of worked around that as well. So I found it quite productive actually on those two fronts. Also attended the Municipal Insurance Association of BC as Tofino's representative on that, which is as dull as dishwater to go to, but it's there are a couple points of note that I wanted to bring back to council from there is that we can invite them for a presentation if council wants to learn more about, especially with new councillors.
But it'll be better
learn
than
more
dishwater.
about. It'll be a little less dull than dishwater, but it's good for council to learn these dull things that the Municipal Insurance Association can do for the district, and including they can help with risk assessment, and they maybe staff is already working with some of their risk assessment people, but they can take you on or work with staff to identify things in your communities that you should be working on. There was also no election this year, as they go through this cycle, and after a municipal or provincial-wide election period, they have no elections there, but they have an orientation session instead. Yeah, so that is a basic summary of it. I always find it sort of gets me refreshed to go to the UBCM and to be exposed to wider ideas. One other last session that I wanted to check with staff if it might be applicable in Tofino is a program called City Studio, and it's cities and municipalities that collaborate with students, and they sort of bring them into, it works well with planning, but they bring students in to work on specific problems, and you get a bunch of fresh ideas, as well as a lot of students interested in and knowing about the work of municipal government. So I don't know if it's applicable to a town the size of Tofino, but it's something that it might work for certain processes. It's called City Studios. It was started in Vancouver. It's now in 9 municipalities across Canada and in Australia and Norway. And it's not it's a framework to make that happen, basically, is what it is. So it's quite adjustable to different sizes of organizations and different situations.
Great.
So
Thanks.
Worth checking.
Great. So what I have to say from UBCM after going for 7 years in a row is, first of all, it was so refreshing to go with new members of council, and I just want to say, first of all, thank you to council for all your support throughout the whole process. And I know Councillor McMaster took a break this year, and I can understand why, because UBCM is intense and it's demanding, and it can be very overwhelming, but it was really nice to go with all of you. And I want to say thanks to our staff too for preparing us well, and with your notes and help with the assistance with the minister meetings, even the ones that turned out to be like a little last minute, and
or by yourself,
as is the way it goes. When I go to UBCM, I usually try to pick 2 or 3 themes or things that are consistent for me in my conversations with MLAs and ministers and others. And so this year my themes were tax fairness, tourism, and climate, and those were the things that I wanted to really get out of the conference as well as bring to the conference. And I was grateful for the opportunity to meet with the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing and Tourism, especially to talk about the relationship between tax fairness and tourism and sustainable tourism. And I was surprised by how pervasive climate issues were in this UBCM. I have never seen a UBCM where there was so much climate-related sessions on the agenda and so much talk and resolutions on the convention floor. So I think that was very interesting. One of my big highlights was meeting the guy from Expedia, and it was the woman from Airbnb who introduced me to him. So having that. and having that conversation with him about why isn't Expedia collecting MRDT on the VRBO and Home Away platform here. So that was good to be able to then take that conversation to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and tell her about it. And as related but less related for Tofino maybe are the meetings that the regional district also arranges. And so I want to say thank you so much to Councillor McQuaid for attending the Minister Darcy meeting and talking about mental health issues and the support services that we need in our community as well as other regional district communities. And we had some interesting meetings with the ministry staff from agriculture talking about land use and cannabis and ALR, which was it's not totally relevant to Tofino, but it's something that I'm pretty interested in. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, that a couple of you were with me, we went to this session with the BC Ombudsperson's office about how to deal with complaints and fair processes, and it was really great. It was a good reinforcement of things that I already knew, but it also made me realize that there are probably some things that we can improve too, and so I already have sat down with Elise and talked to her a little bit about her website and processes, and we'll talk more as council and staff about that too. But I know we connected on that and said, hey, you know, there's some things we can do better. So that's one of the really great things about UBCM is that you learn about what's going on in other places and you realize that you can improve what's going on. So there. All right, thanks for the UBCM brain dump. That's great. All right. So that brings us to the end of our open meeting, and we do have a question period. So anybody who has questions, you have up to 2 minutes.
At the beginning of the meeting, I talked about lack of transparency and the method by which the burden on the residents of Tofino has been done. I found Councillor Anderson's comments quite telling in the sense that he was asking questions that were fundamental to that approval, such as there's a liquid waste management plan which exists, and for that reason we do not have to go through electoral approval. That's a key element of how we get to this point of not having to have electoral approval. And so he's asking very basic questions about that. So if a councillor doesn't understand the elements of that, how could a resident of Tofino possibly be expected to? The essence of the problem is that there's some liquid waste management plan, as Bob said, 15 years ago, and then there was another one maybe 3 years ago. And right in the report from Financial Services in July and then again in October, the document relies on that plan as a keystone, as a reason why we do not need to go through electoral approval. It's an essence, a salient fact in there. And so to me, this underscores the point that I was making. You know, I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm not trying to I don't want to tell people they're doing a bad job. I think you guys are doing a really wonderful job. But this situation to me shows the essence of the issue which I'm raising. We are indebting ourselves massively, and we're doing it with a report that says there is an LWMP. It doesn't say which one or where. And the most salient thing that it doesn't say to me is, does that previous LWMP and process related with it, did it have electoral approval process? Because if there was no electoral approval process, then we're into a debate about whether or not that's required due to environmental reasons, which also is not unclear. Final comment, the report in July says electoral approval may not be required. The one in October says electoral approval is not required. Two fundamentally different statements.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify a couple of things. First of all, I can't speak for Councillor Anderson, but I will say that I did, and I think others have asked questions in the process with our staff here in order to clarify things, but it is not fair to draw the conclusion that it means that a member of council didn't know the answer. So I think part of what we're doing in our dialogue sometimes with staff is we know we have a gallery, people are listening. We ask questions to ensure that everyone in the room is clear. So may or may not answer your question. As to the matter of the liquid waste management plan in the past, when you sit at this table and you read the number of reports and you come to all of the meetings, it is very clear to us when the liquid waste management plan is referred to what it is. We know how to find it and where to go. But I hear your feedback, which is that it's not clear enough to you when you read the staff report exactly what's being referred to. And I think there are probably a few things that we can do that will help that, including providing links and just ensuring that it's clear where, you know, what report is being referred to. liquid waste management plans are not subject to elector assent. It is the borrowing of the money that is required, that elector assent can be required for. And so as Nyla explained earlier, because we are required with the Environmental Management Act to have this level of treatment, the borrowing of the capital to do the works in order to meet those standards or quality objectives means that we don't have to go to elector assent. So if that has been confusing to you in the past, then I'm sorry, and I think we can do a better job, and we'll try to make that more clear.
Well,
there are lots of other jobs like, or projects like the gym. If we did go towards the gym facility, for example, there's no exemption from that, and we would have to go to elector assent.
so-
But I can't debate with you right now. I've done my best to answer your questions.
Just briefly.
Not really. Our process says that you have 2 minutes to make questions and answers. I'm happy to meet with you separately, Yarmo, and talk to you. Yeah, it is. I know.
It just underscores the lack of clarity for me, that's all.
Okay, and I value that feedback, so thank you.
That's my comment.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Yarmo. I appreciate it. Yeah, Jack.
My confusion about this subject is that when we read the law, it says that you may proceed without electoral approval.
Yes.
It doesn't compel you. So it's somewhere in there, there's a choice. Now, the other thing I'd like to say is when you had to go back and amend the plan and the work to demonstrate that there had been sufficient public consultation, that was on the advice of the, I can't remember his title, the official in Victoria, and you did that. But the events that were cited, one in particular, was something that was anything but transparent. That was the approval process for your 5-year plan last spring, in which the public was invited, and those who knew about the invitation to comment were contacted by email. Well, everyone isn't on the District of Tofino email who might want to comment. The other thing is that, according to the press, there were 50 submissions, all against the 5-year plan. But the 5-year plan is not specific to the liquid waste management issue or its costs, but it was the bulk of it. But there were 50 comments against. And then there was a meeting at which that 5-year plan was to be voted on. There was a private meeting at which the councillors there had discussed how they were going to vote or whatever. We don't know what was discussed in the closed meeting. But then there was the public meeting at which the vote was taken. And in attendance, it was remarkable. And I noted to some of the councillors that there was not one word of discussion of the issue in the public meeting, and the vote was taken. Now, to someone in the public, that doesn't look like transparency. The other thing I would comment is on, I have never played a game in which you can outshoot the opponent 50-1 and somehow lose. And the reason being, the net was turned the opposite direction so that they couldn't score any goals. That's the appearance of what has taken place. Okay, so I won't belabor it any longer.
Thank you for the observation. I think you have some great comments there. I just want to note that the one meeting that I believe that you attended, and I know that I wasn't there, so where we adopted the financial plan.
You and Mr. Steer were not there.
Yeah, that's correct. So where the financial plan was the adoption of the bylaw that had already been passed 3 times in open public meetings, and that considerable conversation had taken place. So I do understand how it would appear to not be transparent, but
specifically, your council or your staff specifically referenced that meeting as an example of how the public had been consulted.
Okay, then that was an error, because a council meeting is something in which the public is welcome to come and attend and watch, but doesn't actually participate in. The opportunities for participation and discussion about the budget occurred earlier, and we've already discussed this year how we're going to change and improve things. So thank you for your feedback.
That was an example of the consultation.
Thank you for your feedback. Thanks. Any other questions from members of the public?
We didn't think you were going to vote
you.
against it today anyway, so we're just, you know.
Hey, you're participating in democracy, and I really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay,
bye.
Goodbye, gentlemen. All right, then we'll turn our attention to the motion to move into the closed meeting, please.
I'll move the recommendation that the meeting be closed to public pursuant to sections 91A, C, E, and F of the Community Charter to discuss matters relating to personal information about an individual who holds or is being considered for position as an officer, employee, or agent, employee relations, law enforcement, acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements.
Thank you. Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. Motion carried. All right. Thanks for coming down. Everyone, can we just take a
short recess so I get the turn for this.